very much for sharing that with us. When we talk about development in sub-Saharan Africa, a lot of people don't understand the extent in which um, lack of equality, contributes to the challenges we have. In a place like Nigeria, for instance, where Africa in general, though, it's estimated that the population of women outweighs that of men. That's like half of the population being sidelined. Imagine what we can do actually if everybody is brought, to speed. But I just want to ask, as an African and having worked in the development sector in Africa, what does sustainable development mean to you?
Um, I think that whenever we want to talk about sustainable development, we would need to do a little bit of, throwback. How did we get here? We initially had Millennium Development Goals. And of course, a lot of countries set targets that they wanted to meet in terms of development. And of course, part of those targets had to do with women's empowerment and, gender equality and eradication of poverty as well. But in between, of course, we've had, what I would call maybe unforeseen events. We've also had conflict here and there and some other challenges, sleeping, in between the target years. And in addition to the fact that, of course, most countries weren't really walking the talk in terms of actualizing the Millennium Development Goals. And they also realized that there was need to set, to take it a notch higher, to come up with sustainable development goals. It's one thing to have a set of goals, but it's another thing to have goals that are sustainable. So I think that's basically what led the UN to come up with the 17 sustainable goals in, I think, 2015.
Yeah.
It might. Okay. So for me, the word sustainable is very key in the sense that you don't want to just, have a one-off policy or law or, some form of institution or structure that will go away in 5 years or 10 years. You want something that would outlive generations.
Yeah.
You want a system that generations coming up, would only add value to it and not that they will come, and start all over again. You want something sustainable, something also that you can pass down from generation to generation. And so I think that sustainable development goals, is a set of what I would call significant, policy direction for states, to put into action and ensure that those 17 goals, are not only actualized, but that they become the reality within the systems of the countries that have endorsed those goals. And in particular, for me, of course, I'm concerned about all the goals. They're all linked. But Sustainable Goal 16, which talks about peace and justice for all, as well as strong institutions, matter a lot, as well as Sustainable Development Goal 5, which talks about gender equality and empowerment for women and girls. Yeah. And of course, both of them are, interrelated.
I agree because, I mean, without strong institutions, laws will not even be upheld, policies will not be made. And I think that is where a lot of African countries are still, that is what they are still struggling with. Because
Absolutely.
outside Africa, there are a lot of other countries have come to a place where they have structure and institutions to, ensure that these other goals are met. But being that we do not have that structure or institutional strength, yet we tend to just scratch the surface. When this is my opinion, though, when it comes to
I agree, absolutely.
Yeah, these other goals. Yeah, and when you were speaking, you talked about countries realizing that there's need to like go a bit higher and then coming up with the Sustainable Development Goal. I just want to know in general, being that most of your works are in Nigeria, I might correct I believe that's correct. Most of your
Nigeria
work,
and elsewhere. I've done work in Nigeria. I've also done work elsewhere, but largely in Nigeria. That's my
yeah, is
constituency.
largely, yes, in Nigeria.
Yeah.
What do you think? How do you think Nigeria has how has Nigeria, let me frame it this way, how has Nigeria, done in attaining gender equality and here, like attaining gender equality? Yes, I think that's the question. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a very big question, if for want of a better way to put it, but it's a very valid question. The journey is still far. I know that Nigeria has been able to adopt some laws and policies towards the promotion of the rights of women. And, just to be specific, Nigeria ratified the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women in 1985, which was commendable. A
Yeah.
number of states have ratified. It's the United Nations Convention. And why I'm citing CEDAW, I mean, that's for the abbreviation, is that CEDAW is a comprehensive United Nations convention that specifically addresses the human rights of women and also, comprehensively defines the word discrimination.
Yeah.
And Nigeria ratified without reservations in 1985. And of course, subsequently, there are other laws. And the question is, how far has Nigeria gone in domesticating CEDAW into our local laws? And that has been a long journey. And a lot of women's rights activists and social justice advocates have pushed for laws to be enacted, even if not domesticating CEDAW as a whole as it is,
Yeah.
but adopting laws that actually encompass the principles within the CEDAW Convention, which Nigeria has ratified without reservations. And so far, there are laws here and there, and I'll just cite a few examples. Because also we have a federal system of government, some states have also enacted certain laws in their respective states. I know Enugu State has a law against maltreatment of widows or widowers, because it's generally both for men and women, but we know that
Yeah.
most times women are more disproportionately affected. Lagos State has a domestic violence law, a very comprehensive one. And Nigeria has a national gender policy. It was a national women's policy or women policy, but now it's now a national gender policy. And then I wouldn't say the latest, but one of the most comprehensive laws that, an act of the National Assembly is the VAP Act, which is the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Bill, which is a very comprehensive act prohibiting violence against all persons. And I'm going to just pause a little bit and just give some background or backstory, if you like, to this law, because initially it was introduced as the Violence Against Women Bill. But, it went through some form of setback, and there was a lot of back and forth, in terms during the advocacy journey, the women's rights advocates with the, members of the Assembly, of the National Assembly, and some of their concerns included the fact that, oh, well, violence affects everybody. So why is it Violence Against Women bill? This bill was introduced because of the statistics, the scary, statistics of, violence against women and girls in Nigeria. They are more disproportionately affected. We can't deny that. Fair enough. fair arguments. And so back and forth, to cut a long story short, finally, of course, it was reviewed, revised with a lot of consultations, and then it became the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act. And one of the, I would say, progressive things about the act is that, apart from the fact that it actually articulates clearly different aspects of violence, it also has provisions for compensation,
Oh,
for victims. Excuse me.
yes, you.
So the VAT Act of 2015 is quite, I would say, a very significant law. And so far, I think almost all the states have domesticated the act in their respective states, which again, I think it's progressive. But one thing is to domesticate, another thing is to gazette and actually make it really, really functional, that people can use that and say, yes, we have this law. And also to raise awareness. Of course, there's been a lot of awareness on the side of, women's rights activists or, civil society organizations, enlightening people that this VAP Act is this and all that, but there's a lot that needs to be done on the government side as well. Because it also took a lot to get them to, to domesticate that law. Yeah.
Yeah, when it comes to government, in government taking up their place in development sphere in Africa, it can be very challenging because a lot of people who are in power, we know how it is with leaders in in Nigeria and Africa in general. I have a personal experience when we started the literacy project in Ebonyi State. I think it was 2021. No, it was shortly after I traveled.